Everyone at Grace Fellowship knew Delbert Marsh as the man who wouldn't cut corners. 24 years as church treasurer, never a penny unaccounted for. Retired high school principal, the kind of man who returned extra change at the grocery store. So when Pastor Weems called that board meeting and accused Delbert of stealing $63,000 from the building fund, people didn't know what to believe. When Boyd Axton, Delbert's best friend of 50 years, stood up and said he'd noticed Delbert acting confused lately, they believed it even less. But the evidence was right there. Falsified invoices, altered records, a missing fortune. What nobody knew was that Delbert's daughter was a forensic accountant, and what she found in those records would destroy more than one reputation. 3 weeks after that board meeting, Boyd showed up at Delbert's door. He hadn't called first. He just appeared on the porch at 9 o'clock at night, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Delbert opened the door and didn't say anything. He just waited. Boyd was a mess. Wrinkled clothes, red eyes. He smelled like whiskey. This wasn't the same man Delbert had served alongside in the military half a century ago. This was someone who had finally broken. "Can I come in?" Boyd asked. Delbert stepped aside. Boyd walked to the living room and sat on the couch. He put his face in his hands and stayed like that for a long time. Delbert sat in the chair across from him. He didn't offer coffee. He didn't ask questions. He just waited. 30 years as a high school principal had taught him when to push and when to let silence do the work. Finally, Boyd looked up. His voice cracked when he spoke. "He made me do it," Boyd said. "Pastor Weems, he made me say those things about you." Delbert kept his expression neutral. "How did he make you?" "He knew things, private things." Boyd's hands were shaking. "After Margie died, I started going to his grief counseling sessions. I told him things I'd never told anyone, things I thought would stay between me and God." "What kind of things?" Boyd shook his head. Tears ran down his face. "I can't tell you. You'll hate me. Everyone will hate me. And Margie." He stopped. He couldn't finish the sentence. Delbert leaned forward. "What about Margie?" But Boyd just kept shaking his head. Whatever secret Pastor Weems held over him, it was bad enough that Boyd would rather destroy 50 years of friendship than reveal it. Delbert sat back. He had questions. He had anger. He had 24 years of faithful service that Boyd had helped tear apart in a single afternoon. But looking at his oldest friend falling apart on his couch, he realized something important. Boyd wasn't the enemy. Boyd was another victim. But here's what Boyd didn't know. Delbert's daughter had already found the evidence. She already knew who really stole that money. And before this night was over, Boyd was going to have to make a choice that would change everything. To understand how they got here, you have to go back to that board meeting. The one where Delbert walked in expecting routine business and walked out in disgrace. Delbert arrived at 6:45. The meeting was at 7. 24 years as treasurer, and he had never once been late. Inside, Pastor Weems sat at the head of the table with a stack of folders in front of him. That was unusual. Normally, the board president ran these meetings. But tonight, Weems had positioned himself at the center of everything. Boyd was there too. He sat 3 chairs down from Weems, staring at the table. He didn't look up when Delbert walked in. Didn't say hello. They'd had coffee together 2 days ago, same as always. Now Boyd acted like Delbert was a stranger. Something was wrong. Delbert felt it immediately. The first 20 minutes were routine business. Then Pastor Weems cleared his throat. "Before we adjourn, there's a serious matter we need to address." He opened one of the folders. "Over the past several weeks, I've been reviewing our financial records. I've found some troubling discrepancies." Delbert sat up straighter. "Discrepancies?" He checked those books every week. Weems slid a sheet of paper across the table. $63,000 has been transferred to an outside account over the past 18 months. The account is listed as a community outreach center, but I've investigated and no such center exists. The room went quiet. Every head turned toward Delbert. "That's not possible," Delbert said. "I review every transaction." Weems nodded slowly. "That's what concerns me, Delbert. Either you missed them or he let the sentence hang in the air. Delbert's face went hot. Or what? Say what you mean. Before Weems could answer, Boyd stood up. He still wouldn't look at Delbert. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've noticed some things lately, Boyd said. Delbert's been confused, forgetting conversations we've had, repeating himself. I didn't want to say anything because he's my friend. But maybe it's time we consider whether he's still capable of handling the church's finances. The words hit Delbert like a physical blow. Boyd, his best friend of 50 years, the man he'd served with in the military, the man whose wife's funeral he'd given the eulogy at just 8 months ago. That man was standing in front of the church board and suggesting Delbert had dementia. Boyd, Delbert said, look at me. Boyd kept his eyes on the table. Look at me, Delbert repeated. Boyd didn't move. Pastor Weems stepped in smoothly. No one is making accusations. We just think it's best if you step back while we conduct a formal review for everyone's protection, including yours. The board members shifted in their seats. Some of them had known Delbert for decades. None of them spoke up. I'd like your keys, Weems said, to the office and the financial files. Just until this is sorted out. Delbert looked around the room. He saw discomfort on every face. He saw doubt. He saw people who had trusted him for 24 years suddenly wondering if they'd been wrong. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keyring. He removed the 2 church keys and set them on the table. Then he stood up and walked out without another word. The parking lot was dark. A few people stood near the windows watching him leave. He could feel their eyes on his back. 50 years of friendship, 24 years of service, gone in 15 minutes. But Delbert noticed something that no one else did. Boyd's hands had been shaking the entire time, and a guilty man doesn't make eye contact. Boyd was hiding something, and Delbert was going to find out what, even if it meant taking down everyone involved. The week after the board meeting was nothing but silence. Delbert's phone didn't ring. No one from church stopped by. People he'd known for decades crossed the street when they saw him at the grocery store. He understood. An accusation like this put everyone in an awkward position. Easier to avoid him than pick a side. But the silence was heavy. His wife had been gone for 6 years. Now his church family was gone too. On the 8th day, he heard a car pull into the driveway. He wasn't expecting anyone. No one had come in a week. His daughter Carolyn walked through the front door with a laptop bag over her shoulder and a look on her face he recognized. It was the look she got when someone had done something unfair and she intended to fix it. I talked to Aunt Ruth, Carolyn said. She told me what happened. Why didn't you call me? I didn't want to bother you. You got your own life. Carolyn set her bag on the kitchen table. Dad, I'm a forensic accountant. This is literally what I do for a living. Did you think I was going to sit in Chicago while someone accuses you of stealing from your own church? Delbert didn't have an answer for that. Do you have copies of the financial records? She asked. Personal copies, not the ones on the church computer. He nodded. He'd always kept a handwritten ledger alongside the digital system, old habits from before computers. Carolyn spent 2 days at that kitchen table. She requested bank statements, pulled public records, made phone calls, barely slept. On the 3rd morning, she called him into the kitchen with a look he hadn't seen since she'd caught a major tax fraud case 3 years ago. Sit down, she said. I found it. She turned her laptop so he could see the screen. A series of transactions highlighted in yellow. $63,000 over 18 months. These payments went to something called Cornerstone Community Outreach, Carolyn said. The records show invoices for youth programs, facility rentals, community meals, all approved by you. I never approved those. I've never even heard of Cornerstone Community Outreach. That's because it doesn't exist. Carolyn clicked to another screen. It's a shell account. The money went straight to a personal checking account owned by a man named Ray Maddox. The name meant nothing to Delbert. Pastor Weems's brother-in-law. Carolyn pulled up court records. Fraud convictions in 2 states. Wire fraud in Florida, embezzlement in Georgia, served 18 months. Got out 4 years ago. Delbert stared at the screen. Weems had been at Grace Fellowship for 2 years. The fraudulent transfers started 18 months ago. The timeline matched perfectly. "There's more," Carolyn said. She opened a spreadsheet. The church's accounting software logs every user who makes entries. Most of these fake transactions were entered using Boyd's login credentials. So Boyd really was involved. But here's the problem. Carolyn pointed to a specific entry dated 3 months ago. This transaction was logged at 2:15 in the afternoon on September 12th. But on September 12th, Boyd was at a cardiologist appointment in Martinsville, 40 miles away. Check-in at 1:45. Check-out at 3:30. Boyd couldn't have made that entry. Someone else used his login. Someone set him up. Pastor Weems gave Boyd access to the accounts 6 months ago, Delbert said slowly. He said it was to help me transition toward retirement. Carolyn nodded. He gave Boyd access so he could use Boyd's credentials. When the money went missing, he had 2 scapegoats. You as the thief, Boyd as the witness. And Boyd went along with it, which means Weems has something on him. Something bad enough to make him betray his best friend of 50 years. What do we do now? Carolyn closed her laptop. I have enough to go to the police right now? We can end this today. Delbert shook his head. Dad, they framed you. They're still out there acting like you're the criminal. I know, but I need to talk to Boyd first. I need to understand why he did this. Does it matter why? He made his choice. Delbert thought about 50 years of friendship. 2 young men in uniform, scared and far from home, watching out for each other. Boyd's wedding, his own wedding, raising kids at the same time, complaining about teenagers, celebrating grandchildren. He thought about standing at Margie's funeral 8 months ago, finding the right words to honor a woman he'd known almost his whole adult life. It matters, Delbert said. I'm not going to let Pastor Weems take my best friend along with everything else. Not if I can help it. Carolyn didn't agree, but she didn't argue either. Because whatever Pastor Weems was holding over Boyd, Delbert had to hear it from his oldest friend before everything fell apart. The next morning, Delbert drove to Boyd's house. The lawn was overgrown. Leaves piled on the steps. The flower beds Margie had planted were choked with weeds. Boyd used to take pride in that yard. Not anymore. Delbert knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Slow footsteps inside, unsteady. Then the door opened. Boyd looked like death. He'd lost weight. His skin was gray. Sweatpants and a stained undershirt. The smell of alcohol drifted through the doorway. Delbert. Boyd's voice was flat. What are you doing here? Checking on you. Boyd laughed. It was a bitter, hollow sound. Checking on me, after what I did. Can I come in? Boyd hesitated. Then he stepped aside. The inside was worse than the outside. Dishes piled in the sink, empty bottles on the coffee table, curtains drawn against the daylight. This wasn't just grief over Margie anymore. This was a man destroying himself. Delbert sat in the armchair by the window. The same chair he'd sat in 100 times before. Football games, holidays, a lifetime of memories in this room. Boyd stayed standing. He crossed his arms like he was trying to hold himself together. I know you didn't do this alone, Delbert said quietly. I know Weems put you up to it. Boyd flinched, but he didn't deny it. I'm not here to accuse you, Delbert continued. I'm here because you're my friend, and I can see you're in trouble. Boyd's jaw tightened. His eyes got wet. For a moment, it looked like he might say something. Might finally let out whatever secret was eating him alive. Then the moment passed. You should go, Boyd said. Boyd, please. His voice broke on the word. I can't do this right now. I can't look at you. Just go. Delbert stood up slowly, walked to the door. But before he left, he turned back. I'll be back, he said. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. That's what 50 years means. It doesn't go away because of one bad chapter. Boyd didn't respond. He just stared at the floor. Delbert sat in his car for a long time before driving away. Boyd was terrified. Not of prison. Not of public shame. Something else. Something personal. He would give Boyd a little more time, but not much. Because once his daughter went to the authorities, Boyd would get caught in the middle whether he was ready or not. A week later, Boyd showed up at Delbert's door. We've already seen what he looked like that night. The wrinkled clothes, the red eyes, the shaking hands. But now you understand what brought him there. The fake transactions, the stolen credentials, the brother-in-law with fraud convictions, the trap Pastor Weems had built around both of them. Boyd sat on Delbert's couch and said, "He made me do it." He said Weems knew private things he'd shared in grief counseling after Margie died. But when Delbert asked what those things were, Boyd couldn't answer. He just shook his head and said, "You'll hate me." Delbert let the silence sit for a while. Then he leaned forward. "I'm not going to hate you," he said. "Whatever it is, I've known you for 50 years. Nothing you tell me changes that." Boyd looked up. His face was wet with tears. "You don't understand. It's not just about me. It's about Margie. Margie's gone, Boyd. She's been gone 8 months. That's why it matters." Boyd's voice cracked. "She's not here to defend herself. She's not here to forgive me. And everyone will remember her differently if they know." Whatever this secret was, Margie was at the center of it. Delbert waited. Let Boyd find his own way to the words. It took a long time. Boyd stared at the carpet, wiped his face with the back of his hand, started to speak twice and stopped. Finally, on the third try, the truth came out. "I had an affair," Boyd said, 31 years ago, a woman at work. It lasted about 6 months. Margie never found out. I ended it and never told anyone. Carried it with me all these years." Delbert didn't react. He just listened. "After Margie died, I couldn't handle the guilt anymore. All those years she loved me and trusted me, and I'd betrayed her. So when Pastor Weems offered grief counseling, I thought maybe I could finally let it go, confess it to someone, get it off my chest." Boyd laughed bitterly. "I thought it would stay between me and God. But Weems recorded it." Boyd nodded. "He recorded everything, every session. And when he needed someone to take the blame for the missing money, he came to me with those recordings. Said if I didn't cooperate, he'd play them for the whole congregation. He'd tell my kids. He'd make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was." Boyd's hands were shaking again. "I couldn't let that happen. Not to Margie's memory. Not to my children. They think their parents had a perfect marriage. They think their mother was loved and cherished every single day. And she was. I did love her. But if this came out, that's not what they'd remember. They'd remember that their father was a liar and a cheat." Delbert sat back in his chair. 31 years. Boyd had carried that secret for 31 years. And Pastor Weems had used it like a weapon. "So you helped him frame me," Delbert said quietly. Boyd flinched like he'd been slapped. "I didn't have a choice. He said if I gave him access to the accounts and backed up his story about you, the recordings would disappear. No one would ever know." He looked at Delbert with desperate eyes. "I thought I was protecting my family. I thought I was protecting Margie. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did hurt me. I know." Boyd's voice was barely a whisper. "And I've hated myself every day since. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I keep seeing your face at that board meeting, the way you looked at me when I said those things." He put his face in his hands. "I destroyed 50 years of friendship to protect the lie, and now I've lost everything anyway." The room went quiet. Outside, a car drove past. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Delbert thought about the anger he had every right to feel. Boyd had betrayed him, publicly humiliated him, called his mental fitness into question in front of people who had trusted him for decades. But he also thought about Pastor Weems sitting in that church office, recording private confessions and storing them for future use. He thought about a grieving man walking into what should have been sacred space and getting turned into a pawn. "There's a way out of this," Delbert said. Boyd looked up. "My daughter found everything, the fake account, the brother-in-law, the login timestamps that prove you couldn't have made those entries. She has enough to put Weems away. What does that have to do with me?" "You testify," Delbert said. "You tell the district attorney everything, the recordings, the blackmail, all of it. You'll face some charges. Probably probation, but you'll face a lot less than Weems will." Boyd shook his head. If I testify, everything comes out. The affair, all of it. My kids will know. The church will know. Maybe, Delbert said. Or maybe the affair stays sealed in the court records and all anyone hears about is the extortion. Either way, you can't keep living like this. Look at yourself, Boyd. You're falling apart. The secret is killing you faster than the truth ever would. Boyd didn't answer. He just sat there, tears running down his face, looking like a man who had finally run out of places to hide. Delbert stood up and walked to the couch. He sat down next to his oldest friend and put a hand on his shoulder. 50 years, Delbert said. That's how long we've known each other. I'm not saying I'm not angry. I'm not saying this doesn't hurt. But I'm not going to let Pastor Weems win. He doesn't get to take our friendship along with everything else. Boyd looked at him. You'd still be my friend? After everything I did? I didn't say it would be easy. I said it was possible. Delbert squeezed his shoulder. But you have to do the right thing. You have to testify. It's the only way either of us gets free of this. Boyd was quiet for a long time. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. I'll do it. 3 days later, Boyd met with the district attorney. Carolyn went with him to make sure he had legal representation. She'd found him a good lawyer, someone who understood that Boyd was a victim too. The meeting lasted 4 hours. Boyd told them everything. The grief counseling sessions, the recordings, the threats. He explained how Pastor Weems had pressured him into providing account access and backing up the false accusations. He handed over text messages where Weems had reminded him to stay on script and warned him what would happen if he didn't. By the end, the district attorney had enough for multiple felony charges: fraud, embezzlement, extortion, breach of fiduciary duty. And because Weems had used his position as a pastor to extract and weaponize private confessions, there were additional charges related to clergy misconduct. The arrest happened on a Sunday morning. Delbert wasn't there. He'd stopped attending Grace Fellowship after the accusation. But Carolyn heard about it from a friend who still went, and she called him right away. Pastor Weems was in the middle of his sermon when 2 county deputies walked through the front doors. The congregation went silent. Weems stopped mid-sentence and watched them come down the center aisle. They arrested him right there at the pulpit, read him his rights in front of 300 people, led him out in handcuffs while the whole church watched. Ray Maddox was arrested the same day at his apartment 2 towns over. The $63,000 was long gone. Gambling debts and a boat that got repossessed. But the paper trail was solid. Both men were looking at serious prison time. Boyd faced charges too. Accessory to fraud, filing false statements. The district attorney offered him a plea deal in exchange for his testimony. Probation. Community service. A fine, no jail time. Some people thought he got off too easy. Others understood that Boyd had been manipulated during the worst period of his life. The truth about his affair never became public. The court records were sealed. The DA saw no reason to destroy a dead woman's memory to prosecute a blackmail victim. 2 weeks after the arrest, Delbert received a letter from the church board. They asked him to come to a special congregational meeting. He almost didn't go. Part of him wanted to let Grace Fellowship figure out their own mess. They'd believed the accusations. They'd watched him walk out in disgrace and done nothing. But Carolyn convinced him. You gave them 24 years, she said. You deserve to hear what they have to say. The meeting was packed. Every pew was full. People stood along the walls. The new interim board president, a woman named Dorothy who had known Delbert since before he became treasurer, stood at the front and read a formal statement. It acknowledged the false accusations. It apologized for the way Delbert had been treated. It praised his decades of faithful service and confirmed that a full audit had found his financial management to be flawless. Then she asked if he would consider returning as treasurer. Delbert stood up slowly. The room went quiet. I appreciate the apology, he said, and I forgive everyone who doubted me. You were lied to by someone you trusted. I understand how that feels. He paused. But I won't be coming back as treasurer. It's time for someone else to take that responsibility. I'll help train whoever you choose, but my time in that role is done. A murmur went through the congregation. Dorothy nodded and thanked him. Delbert wasn't finished. "There's one more thing," he said. He looked toward the back of the room, where Boyd sat alone in the last pew. Boyd Axton was manipulated and threatened by Pastor Weems. He made mistakes. He hurt me. But he also came forward and told the truth when it mattered. That took courage. Boyd's head was down. He wouldn't look up. "I've known Boyd for 50 years, Delbert continued, and I'm choosing to forgive him. I hope this congregation will do the same." Nobody spoke. A few people turned to look at Boyd. Most just stared at Delbert. He sat back down. The meeting ended shortly after. Outside in the parking lot, Boyd caught up with him. "You didn't have to do that," Boyd said. His eyes were wet. "Say those things about me, in front of everyone." "Yes, I did." Boyd stood there for a moment, not sure what to say. Then he asked a question that clearly took everything he had. "Do you think we could get coffee sometime, like we used to?" Delbert looked at his oldest friend. 50 years of history, a betrayal that nearly destroyed him, a confession that explained everything, a choice to testify that made things right. The friendship would never be exactly what it was. Some things don't go back to the way they were. But that didn't mean it had to end. "How about Thursday?" Delbert said. Boyd nodded. His shoulders dropped like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "Thursday," he repeated. "I'll be there." Delbert got in his car and drove home. The house was still empty. His wife was still gone. But for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel so heavy. He'd lost his position at the church. He'd almost lost his reputation. But he hadn't lost his best friend, and Pastor Weems hadn't won. That was enough.